Hey everybody, we are back for another episode of NPC Next Portable Console. I'm John Voorhees. I've got a couple of pals with me. I've got Brendon Bigley from New York City. Hey.
Oh, hello. It's me from New York, live from New York.
And Federico Vitici from Rome.
Hello.
Another
hello.
big city.
Hi,
I'm in the little
hi.
city.
I've always wondered, Brendon, can you do a New York accent?
Hey, I'm walking here. How's that? Is that good?
It's a
I
very
saw Boyd
stereotypical.
today. Yeah.
Good job. Well done.
We have some really important follow-up and news to get to immediately.
Yeah.
At the
I think this
beginning
is
of the
probably
show.
a month-long follow-up we've had so far now, thanks to the slow drip of information.
Brendon, this is all yours.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I woke up basically, this is not a joke, either of you or anyone listening at home. Every morning I wake up and the first thing I do is I check the SBC gaming subreddit to see if there's new news about the Ambernick RG Rotate. Every morning. I'm like,
Yes.
when is Ambernick posting the next video about it?
Yep.
When are they announcing more stuff? So this morning I woke up, and 1 hour before I woke up, they had posted a video that was like the unboxing experience and specs reveal. And they announced a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that was like really surprising in this video. First and foremost, the black model and the silver model are made of two different materials, which I was actually most surprised by. The silver model is all aluminum. The whole thing is aluminum. And the black model is mostly plastic with some aluminum touches, which I think is probably similar to, I would guess, the Trim UI brick in terms of like some of the more important parts are made of metal and basically everything else is made of plastic, unless you get the hammer, obviously. But I think the original Trim UI brick is maybe a good kind of exemplar of what we're talking about here. We also got pricing, not from this video, which I thought was interesting, but through Retro Dodo has a blog post up today announcing the pricing and the release date. So that black model that's made of plastic is going to be $88, and the metal model is going to be $108. And there's early bird pricing if you buy them within the first 72 hours. The black model is going to be $83, and the silver one's going to be a flat $100. This is coming out on May 11th, so about a week and a half from now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just about a week and a half from when this episode comes out. Specs-wise, it's both surprising and not so surprising. So it's using the T618 chip, which is the same chip that was inside the RG Vita. Basically almost exactly the same specs in a lot of ways, just with a much, much, much smaller battery, which is, I think, one of the things I'm more concerned about.
Yeah,
so
that's a
very
very
small
small
battery.
battery.
yeah, it's a 2,000 milliamp hour battery, which they say will get you 5 hours of gameplay.
Okay.
It's worth mentioning that they also said that the
Of what? Gameplay of what?
Right, yeah, maybe just Game Boy. They also said that the 5,000 milliamp hour battery in the RG Vita would get you 6 hours of gameplay. So they're saying that the 3,000 milliamp hour difference between those two will only get you 1 extra hour of gameplay per their own specs.
That's interesting math. That's interesting.
It's very interesting math. Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. It also has 3 gigs of RAM, just like the RG Vita. So if you want to get an understanding of like what this thing is capable of, you can go look at RG Vita reviews, not the Vita Pro specifically, but RG Vita reviews, and you can get a pretty good idea of it. They also released a video in between last week's episode and this week's episode showing off a bunch of gameplay of different systems, which I found also baffling. Basically, every time Ambernick has announced more stuff about this thing, it has become more baffling. It has not become any less enticing to me, I should say. I'm still interested in it.
Agreed.
But every time they announce more stuff about it, I'm confused. So the video they showed last week was like a bunch of gameplay, and they were showing like GameCube and PS2 and Nintendo Wii and PSP and all of these systems, most of which they were showing were like 16:9 systems that they literally squeezed into the 1:1 aspect ratio of the screen of the RG Rotate, which I thought was bizarre. And then when you think about the PS2 and the GameCube stuff, this thing doesn't have an analog stick on it.
It has a gyroscope, which I find a little weird.
It does have a gyroscope. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff in here. So one of the things they said is that the function button on the right side, if you press that, it'll switch the D-pad into analog stick mode, so you can technically kind of use it as an analog stick, quote unquote.
Kind of, yeah.
But I mean, you're still missing out on most of the buttons you would need in that case. Speaking of buttons, one of the other things they announced is it comes with replacement L2 and R2 buttons that you can swap in and out. So it ships with buttons that are completely flat, like totally flush against the top of the device. But if you unscrew the back and then unplug a bunch of stuff, you can swap in L2 and R2 buttons that are more high profile. Easily hot swappable is how they're promoting it, which I find also very funny.
They do not pop off then. They just you have to do a little bit of work.
The thing that frustrates me about that actually is that it's obviously those replacement buttons are going to be better than the ones that it comes with. Like I think from every device I've used at this point, any device with inline L2 or shoulder buttons, it's always better to have some kind of like height differential between those two. Yeah. It just makes it a lot easier to know which of those buttons you're pressing. So I mean that'll probably be like if I get this thing, it'll be the first thing I do is open it up and swap those buttons out realistically. Yeah. I think overall, my main feeling about this, now that we've kind of seen what I'm guessing is all of the promotional material, I imagine we won't get another video like this before it actually launches. I think that Ambernick is positioning this more as a lifestyle device than as anything else. And that's why you have Android and the touchscreen and the focus on media consumption and the like weird analog clock lock screen that you have. One fun note from today's video also is that this hinge, like the swiveling hinge that they built, which they say they rigorously tested, and I'm excited to see when reviewers get their hands on it how rigorous it is. But anyway, that hinge has a Hall effect sensor on it, so it will actually like wake the device from sleep and put it back to sleep. And then there is also in the settings a setting that allows you to enable the analog clock when you close it, which is very similar, weirdly, to the PSP Go. That's also how the PSP Go works. When you slide it up and slide it back down, the little analog clock shows up, which I kind of love. And that's the thing for me. I think at the end of the day is the RG Rotate is really enticing because it's so weird. Like the more weird stuff they announce, the more interesting it becomes to me, because it feels like in this world where like all of the consoles are kind of homogenizing, even Nintendo has gotten rid of most of like the fun flourishes of its devices. You know, you don't have like fun music or weird sound effects or like anything going. It's like a very like flat home screen. There's something nice about a company making a device that's like this strange, made for playing games. And then also, alongside that, like from the lifestyle device angle, I do like the idea of decoupling more stuff from my phone. Like I don't know how realistic it is. I will test this, I promise you, everybody. But like if I download like the Kindle app on here, like if I start reading books on here, that'd be interesting. If I'm watching YouTube videos on here, I think that'd be interesting.
Okay.
If I'm listening to music on here, I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I will get a USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter or just use my ear pods or something. I will try to use this as like a media player device and a lifestyle device also. I think one of the things that really leans me in that direction is it is also a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. Like the 3.5-inch screen is at least 0.5 inches bigger than I thought the thing was going to be in the first place.
Yeah.
At least when they first started showing it off, it really seemed like it was going to be a pretty tiny device, but it seems like it's kind of chunky. Like it's going to be like...
Yeah, it's pretty good size.
Yeah.
I cannot get over the gameplay video, the part where they show the squished Twilight Princess.
Yeah, Squish Twilight Princess, and then God of War on PSP.
And then God of War.
And then they do PC streaming, and this thing's got Wi-Fi 5, which
I mean,
is not going to be great.
I gotta say, it looks pretty glorious in Game Boy Color and Game Boy emulation.
Yes.
With just the right bezel around it, looks kind of okay with GBA. But the moment you start squishing GameCube and PlayStation games, like, you just lose me there. Why would you even show it off?
That was my question. That was also my question. Yeah, it's so funny. I look, of the trade-offs, of the many trade-offs this device is making, the weirdest one to me is deciding to show it running those devices with no analog sticks.
Yeah,
and then with that screen, it's like it's clearly built to be playing things like Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. So like
Yes.
lean into that. Or obviously, older retro consoles with like maybe 4x5 screens and things like that.
Yep.
That won't look so wild with a little bit of bezel here and there. I am basically buying this as a replacement for the Miyoo Flip. Like that's kind of the idea I have in the back of my head about it, which is a device I almost exclusively use for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. So I feel like in that respect, this is going to be great.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I certainly wouldn't go into this thinking that this is going to be your machine for playing God of War. I mean,
Right.
As much as Nick
We're streaming
would love you
Cuphead too.
to.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be that. But I think it's a neat bonus that you can run various Android apps and maybe, as you say, offload some things that you do otherwise onto this little device. It's running Android 12. So that's, a little bit older version of Android, which I'm sure is partly a cost issue from Anbernick's standpoint. But that'll run most games and you'll be able to get your music on there, Spotify, Kindle, all those kind of things if you want it.
Yeah. Yeah, it also has its own launcher, which is weird. You have to it's like there's the normal Android launcher, and then if you swipe down into the notification shade, and all those like kind of Android options, one of the toggles you tap on it and it opens up like an Android Anbernick exclusive front end, which is that thing that we were talking about, John.
Oh, right.
That shows all the different consoles and all the games you have for all your consoles.
Right.
So it seems like it'll come pre-configured in some way, shape, or form, but usually with Android devices like this, I tend to find like a front end and just stick with that and never change it again.
It'll be interesting if somebody comes up with a square front end, like something that's like really dedicated to this type of device and also takes advantage of, if it's open enough, things like that lock screen so that you can have multiple different clocks or other kinds of status notifications when it's locked.
Yeah, I'll be interested. Like I'm considering for devices that I can't get something like Cocoon on or ESDE or whatever. I usually just use Niagara, which is like a really, really, really simple, great Android.
Very
front end,
minimal. Yeah,
which I love. I use it on like my Books Palma and stuff like that. I feel like that would be really great on here.
Yeah. So after the RG Rotate, I feel like we need to mention the Steam controller. Which is the other major news that happened since recording last week's episode. So, first of all, it's coming out. The pre-orders, I mean, you will be able to order one on May 4th. That should be, when is it? Next Monday? When we're recording this on Thursday?
Yes. Let's see. When is it? Yeah, the 4th is Monday, so it'll be before this episode
just
comes
a
out.
day before this episode comes
if
out.
If you're listening to this, you can order a Steam controller.
Yeah, and it's going to be $99. I plan on ordering 2 of them for reasons that I will mention in a bit. Just wanted to, mention a few of the reviews that pretty much like this is exactly what I wanted to see from this controller.
Yeah,
pretty much everybody is in agreement that not only is this an obvious improvement over the original Steam controller from a few years ago. You know, the weird one with the 2 circular touchpads. Very strange device. I have one. It's so strange. But this is potentially one of the best PC controllers that you can get, especially if you are a Steam user.
Yeah.
It has a little bit of everything. It's surprisingly comfortable and ergonomic. Not a huge surprise given Valve's pedigree with the Steam Deck and how, despite its size, it's arguably the most comfortable big size handheld I've ever tested.
Yeah, the grips on this controller look really good to me.
Yeah,
they look really good. It's got 2 touchpads. It's got the 2 TMR sticks. It's got a charging puck.
This was the thing that really got me like, oh yeah, I'm definitely ordering one day one. Yeah,
the charging puck, which seems to use 3 pogo pins. Nothing fancy, but it also doubles as a wireless dongle. So the same thing handles both charging with magnetic attachment to the Steam controller and wireless, receiving support for a host computer device, which is great.
John, I think you mentioned in our chat together, you were like, I'm waiting for the first person to have like a 3D printable dock for this.
Oh yeah, it seems like it's absolutely made for that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a very small. The puck it's not a puck in the sense of it being like a round hockey puck or something. It's like a little oval shaped thing that's not much bigger than the 3 pogo pins itself. It's
it's like
tiny,
it's like the size of like a standard SD card that like kind of
it's
magnetically
pretty
attaches
small.
to the back. But yeah, you get that and you kind of slot that into kind of a weighted little dock.
Be
that you can
perfect.
3D print. Oh my god, yeah. Etsy's gonna go wild for that thing.
Yes. There's an LED in the controller that shows you the different modes. So, for example, the LED is white when you're using the USB-C dongle. It's blue when you're using Bluetooth. It flashes red when there's an update. You can obviously manage all controller updates just like you can in the existing Steam UI with the Steam Deck, for example.
Very customizable, just
Very
like the
customizable.
Steam Deck. Yeah.
Yeah, highly customizable, remapping controls, assigning shortcuts, remapping per game, like all the usual things that Valve has been doing for the past couple of years in terms of customization. It's all there for the Steam controller. 35 hours of gameplay, supposedly with a full charge, and everybody seems to say that it's very comfortable to use.
Yeah,
And,
it sounds like the buttons and things are actually a little nicer than on the Steam Deck, according to at least some of the reviews I read.
Yeah. I've talked to some people who tested it, and everyone was like, I'm going to get one for myself. Basically, everyone I talked to who
That's always a good sign.
wants one. Yeah.
I am very intrigued by the feature called Grip Sense.
Yeah.
So there are capacitive sensors in the controller that can sense when you're holding or when you're sort of lifting your hand off of the controller. And that can also be mapped to something. So, for example, in one of the demos that I've seen in Valve has an official walkthrough on YouTube. One of the things that you can see, for example, in a game, you can map lifting your hand off of the grip to say pause the game or open the inventory or open the map screen, for example. So really interesting implementation of that sensor.
Yeah.
It's not the first time that we have seen, obviously Brendon is coming off of a recording about a retrospective of the PS Vita. It's not the first time that we're seeing capacitive controllers in the back, capacitive sensors in the back of a controller. The Vita was using something else in a handful of games. Valve is saying that this is going to be a more like system feature of the controller itself that you can just remap to whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm a little bummed personally that black is the only color available. I would have liked to see a white version, just like they did a limited edition white Steam Deck. But we'll
Wait 6 to 18 months and you'll have one.
probably. I will get one for the office and I will get one for the living room because, as I will talk about in XL, I have made a bit of an update to my docking station setup in the living room for SteamOS.
Great.
So we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah. I'm going to get at least one, also maybe two, because I have my SteamOS machine out in the living room, and then I have my gaming PC like right here. And if I like the one in the living room enough, I will probably also put it here.
Yeah, I'm going to start with one, but I could see getting two at some point too for living room office too.
One thing that's also a kind of side note from this that's worth mentioning is a lot of outlets that were talking to Valve about this device also asked, like, hey, is there a Steam Deck 2 coming? The answer is yes. They're working on it.
Yeah.
They officially said yes. They're still working on it, so that's good to know.
Yep.
Yeah.
What else do we want to cover next?
Yeah. What do we got, folks?
We got grip stuff going on here with the Switch. I think we have a couple of stories that are probably worth mentioning.
Oh, yes.
Federico, you posted in our chat about the D-brand Joy Lock, which is coming out, which I thought looks interesting.
So this is a third-party grip for the Joy-Cons. You've seen a bunch of these, like you detach the Joy-Cons from the Switch and then you put them inside of a grip, and so you can sort of use it as a all-in-one controller. Nintendo makes this kind of official accessory. What's different about the new D-brand one is that they have a ratcheting mechanism to adjust the angle of the Joy-Cons. So they do not have to sit in a fixed position. You can adjust this little dial thing and basically switch the angle of the two Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clever. I mean, personally, at this point, I would ask myself, why not just use a Pro controller?
Cost. I think cost is the main idea.
And I'll take that. And I'll take that. Fair feedback. So if you don't want to spend...
If you just buy this controller, it's or controller holder, I guess, it's $20.
It's $20. So you don't have to spend the $70, $80 for a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which is, I would say, so far the most comfortable controller I've ever used.
It's
Maybe
fantastic, yeah.
maybe the Steam controller will dethrone the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller. It's those sticks are so smooth. I don't know what Nintendo has done to those sticks on the Pro controller. But anyway, we also have, John, you've been following this, I think, a development update on the Genki grips.
Yeah, I have been, because I participated in this Kickstarter. I backed it, and it's been a long time now, actually, since that Kickstarter started, but it was a very long Kickstarter. It only just recently ended, and they don't do a lot of updates. They do them about once a month or so. But
I think I
Genki,
pledged to this Kickstarter.
yeah, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised. I think maybe you did. We both did, I believe. But they've changed a little bit. They changed the design, and it's a little hard to tell from the renderings that they put in this update. But essentially, the way it was originally designed, it uses like a buckle mechanism to connect the grips to the the Joy-Con. And so when the grips were taken off, the mechanism that remained on the Switch, I guess, could snag on things. So they changed that around to avoid that problem. And they're also looking for community input on things like colors and shapes, because if you remember with this one, part of the appeal of it was they came up with something like 5 or 6 different shapes. And part of what they did is part of this Kickstarter was they said, oh, if we hit these levels, we'll have more colors, we'll have more shapes, all that kind of thing. Well, they've gotten themselves into a position now where there are hundreds of permutations of colors and shapes that they have now committed to, and they're trying to get feedback, I think, to maybe narrow it down a little bit, and that does worry me a little bit, because I think that they've kind of put themselves into a position to commit to building so many different color combinations with shapes that this could take a really long time for it to actually come out. They did, one of the colors they added was a quartz purple shell, which is a transparent purple, which looks pretty nice in the pictures I've seen.
Can I ask a question? What is the difference between this and the attack vector that they already sell?
The attack vector, I'm not familiar with that one.
I think judging from the fact that I pledged the mix and match package, I think they've made a ton of different grip styles.
It's the shapes. They have
it's the different shapes.
Simple ones, really bulbous ones.
Yeah, it seems like if you get the full pack,
Yeah,
you're getting a lot of stuff, and then the attack vector comes with 3.
Yeah, there was a really weird one that now that I'm seeing
called the dragon,
photos,
I think.
The dragon, yes, John. we talked about this.
We did.
There was a really strange one.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Oh, the dragon
Something
back.
dragon. Yeah.
It's the dragon back.
I mean, I think what you'll find
banana and
is
dragon back. Yes.
dragon back. I think you'll find, probably most people will find, that they get all these different grips and they'll gravitate to one of them. And
this is the that's my main issue with this, I think, in general, is like I'm just getting a lot of plastic produced and sent to me, most of which I won't use because I'll just find the one that works for me. Which one is it? The banana shape one. That one basically looks exactly like the D-brand Joy-Lock.
Yeah.
That's which is what I use currently and is great. So give that one a shot, folks.
Yeah. Finally, I think before we move on to NPC XL, we wanted to mention GameHub on the Mac. John, you linked this on Mac Stories. There's a hands-on video by Russ at Retro Game Core.
Yep.
There is a beta version that you can, if I'm not mistaken, you can get in if you join the GameHub Discord and, I don't know, say a secret word or something.
You have to fill out a Google form and what kind of computer you have, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Essentially, this is very promising. Already in this first beta version that Russ showed off, essentially 60% of the, how many games? 20 games tested.
Yeah.
Those are not non-Mac native games. So stuff that runs on Windows, not available with the native Mac version. Of those 20 games, basically more than half, 60% of them were playable. Some of them surprisingly so, including something like the recently released Pragmata. I mean,
that was impressive.
You will not be able to run that, obviously, at max settings with path tracing turned on and stuff like that. But it's literally a game that came out 2 weeks ago, and it's by definition a AAA title this year, and you can emulate it on a Mac using GameHub beta for Mac. This is very impressive.
It is. They've paused the beta, Federico. I thought that I had joined this beta before, and I went back and I couldn't find any record of having done it, and I didn't do it. So I joined the Discord. I went in there. I filled out the form anyway, but they had found that they were getting a lot of people joining, and there was a lot of spamming happening because I guess there's a communications feature that can be used between players, and a lot of people were joining, and having.
Why would they do that? Why would they put that in?
They were having harassment issues and all kinds of spam, and so they basically said we've slowed down the beta. Please don't click on any links that you get in GameHub for Mac. It's kind of rough. So I'm not expecting to get in anytime soon, unfortunately. And I don't know if that was because a lot of people heard about it through Russ's video or some other reason, but they've slowed it down. It hasn't been public. It hasn't been available. It's considered a closed beta, but I mean, for a while there, basically anybody could get in as long as you went to the Discord and filled out a form.
Yeah, there are a bunch of people in the TWG Discord who have been talking about it and using it, and seem decently impressed by it. Yeah. I'll wait for the full release, I think. And also, I feel like, considering this is a fork of an already open source thing, I'm like, how long until we get something like a game native adjacent version of this?
Yeah, agreed.
We had Whiskey for a while, and Whiskey was like pretty close to good in terms of using the Apple porting toolkit. But I'm I don't know. I'm really impressed by this. I'm really surprised at how well it works. I really, at least based on our previous conversations about it, I was a little bit iffy on really the viability of this. And to see it working so well, especially with new stuff like that, really impressive.
I'm really impressed primarily because I've been testing a fair number of AAA games that were actually optimized for the Mac using Metal FX and all that stuff, and they still run not great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I just tried Chronos the other day and wrote about that, and it works really well on like an M4 Max MacBook Pro, but that's a really high-end expensive computer, and it just gets the fans roaring immediately playing that game. It's totally playable and looks good on that system, but like if you have an M1 era Mac, it's not nearly as nice.
Viable. Yeah.
I mean, if anything, this story continues to prove if we want to call it like a scaling law of emulation, which is the more computing power you throw at an emulation problem, the better results you're still gonna get. So apparently there's no ceiling to this, because the moment that you can run Pragmata on a Mac via emulation just because of the horsepower of Apple Silicon, what are we even talking about, folks? I mean, there is virtually no limit at this point. The more powerful a CPU with some GPU help on the side you can get, the better performance you're going to get with emulation on a Mac. At this point, seeing these numbers and seeing these videos, I am very, very surprised that Apple is not doing something official and real and even better integrated at this point.
Especially Federico, if you consider the iPhone and the iPad, which you can't do this on because of the way the App Store is locked down. But if Apple had an official route for people to do this, those devices would be great too.
Apple doesn't want to, Apple doesn't want to do the complex stuff of figuring out emulation, because I mean, if
this is the thing that frustrates me. This is the thing that drives me crazy, is because it's not complicated. Like,
but can you imagine Apple doing support for people saying, by the way, why does Pragmata run a 55 FPS instead of 60? Like, who's gonna get back to you? Not John Turnus.
I feel like the kinds of people who are asking that question in the first place are not the kinds of people who are going to reach out to Apple support about it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You're also right.
I just feel like the game porting toolkit, because it just is a layer running underneath everything, that is the removal of the complication.
It's
That
right
is the
there.
Appleification of it already. Like they already did it.
Yeah.
Maybe in the John Turnus era, we have a product guy back in the hot seat. Like maybe he'll take the lead on it at some point. But how long have we been asking this question for?
It's a way to show
as
off.
long as the podcast has existed.
Yeah.
Look, here's the honest truth. If Apple came up with a native solution to this and said, this is gonna be called Apple Arcade Pro, and
Yes.
it's $20 a month, and you can emulate a whole bunch of PC games on your Apple devices, I would instantly
We've partnered
sign up
with
for that.
Valve, etc.
Instant money, $20 a month, Apple Arcade Pro, take my money, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I mean,
It's a good way to show off the hardware too, and we've got a hardware
Yeah.
guy coming in as CEO. So fingers crossed. But
one can
not
dream,
expecting
you know,
anything.
You know. Anyway,
I also think the Neo. Yeah, we could just stop. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we could go on forever.
Just rewind the last 10 times we talked about this.
Yeah. We could go on and on and on, and
We should wrap up. What are we talking about in XL, folks?
we're talking about my Legion Go 2 setup and some changes that I've made to my living room docking situation. And I also have a little tip for Windows screenshots. I'll get to that in a minute. So I'll be talking about my Legion Go 2 Windows and SteamOS primarily. I'm not sure if you guys also have a topic or something like
No,
that.
I thought we could talk a little bit about Game Native too, because I dove back into
All
Game Native for the first time since the fall and was very surprised at the results.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We will be talking about that.
All right.
Well, this is it.
This is it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. You can find Brendon Bigley over at wavelengths.online and on Into the Aether, and Federico and I are over at macstories.net and a bunch of other podcasts. And, of course, we're on social media. Just search for us there. We're usually easy to find on Blue Sky or Mastodon. Talk to you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.